Okay, sounds like most people are on at this point. This session is being recorded, so we can share this to those that couldn't attend. Um, After we sent the agenda out, we realized that there's just a few things related to supports coordination enhancement request type information. So we thought that we'll skip to that part of the agenda in case those people that are involved in that but may not be involved in billing or non-services could sign off early and not have to sit through all of the billing piece of the call. So we're going to get started with enhancement request on page 6 and go from there. So we were asked by an agency to add um, a question to the supports coordination intervention in the person-centered service plan, and wanted to ask on the design call today, related to asking who's responsible for monitoring the person-centered service plan, and to identify if it's a sports coordinator, the participant or representative, or other, with a dialogue/data box that you could put who the other person is. And it was in order to meet a standard in the SEQR tool. And so we can certainly do that. In the past, we had default text in the SC intervention description that came up whenever you added one. Um, and it had an acronym in it. And so when we were doing the work group, we decided, let's just take that out of there, and people could put in whatever they needed to put in there. But that purpose for that language was to meet that standard. So SC to provide sports coordination services, including monitoring the person-centered service plan, was the text before. We could just spell out supports coordinator to provide instead of the acronym, and then that would solve that problem. And in the past, as would be if we did this, it could be editable. So, you can change the wording to whatever needs to be. So that's one option. And another option is we could just add sub-question text, which what we mean by that is where we normally say um, PCSP, whoops. Okay, sorry, I think I'm having problems with my screens. Can somebody let me know if you can see my screen and hear me now?
Armor Point.
I can, Melissa.
Thank you. Okay, sorry about that. It just kind of, everything went black for me and then it went all over the place. Okay, so the sub-question text is basically where you see the question on the left panel, you see another extra text to that would then, we could say, include who will be monitoring the PCSP in that text as a prompt, basically, so that they know that they should indicate that in that intervention description. So those are two alternative options. And the reason we want to present that is because it's a simpler change for us. It's much faster. That field's already on our PCSP report. And previously we had kind of addressed this by using that. So if we do add the additional question, which we can do too, then we have to add that to the report, as well as adding just the fields and responses. So it's a little more complicated than just doing one of the other two options. So I wanted to talk about that, and first of all, find out if everyone is interested in doing anything, and then what would be the preference.
Hi, Melissa. Marsha Burks from TIC. I'm actually the one that requested this. I don't really care which option it is. I think somehow once it was deleted from the dialog box, people went to saying that they would assist with the person-centered service plan instead of saying who would be responsible. So if we could have that in there, with staff turnover, things like this get missed sometimes or interpreted wrong. But any of these would work for me.
Okay, that's good to know. Any other thoughts? Those of you, if you're joining on the phone, you have to do *6 to unmute yourself. Is anybody opposed to adding this at all?
Melissa, we have a chat. Jenna says that she can't get her mic to work, so she prefers the default text to be put in.
Okay. Thanks, Jenna. All right, so I guess with, nothing else.
So this is John
Oh.
from Region 4. It looks in the chat box too that Jenna had also mentioned that she opposed it being added to the question form, just to
Okay,
keep the dialogue on.
all right, without hearing any opposition, then I think we'll go with that. And set the default text to spell out supports coordinator now instead of SC and put that default text back in. Okay, so the other thing that relates to non-billing, non-service staff is the reports. So with the 4.1 release, we have to rewrite most of the reports because of the change, because SSN will no longer be a key identifier. It's just going to be an extra field in the system to track when needed, from my choice, obviously. And so Compass ID is going to be the new ID that we've talked about a long time ago, but it's basically a default. It's the system's going to auto add it, and it's going to kind of be a sequential number type thing that you won't change. It's just there, and that will become like a medical record number, for lack of a better term. So that will be in the system for each person and will be used to identify people in the future. So we did look, because there's a lot of reports, and so we wanted to look to make sure if there's any out there that don't make sense to rewrite because of all of the various changes that have happened in the last 15 years, that some of these reports have been around for, and we don't believe that they may have a business purpose anymore. So the reports that we found that were probably no longer applicable were the waiver summary and participant detail reports. They've only been run 40 times by all agencies in the last 2 years. And the purpose that those used to be for was to figure out what category somebody fell in for extra money back in the old pre-capitation days. And it was a peel the onion type report that, they fell into MFP first and then transition next, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all really it was meant to be, is to know and identify those folks related to getting extra money in for that purpose, which now there's SSP. So we don't see that there's really a reason to keep those around anymore. The other one is the RUG actual cost reports. It's a cost per day report, which is not a thing anymore with My Choice. And there's only 2 agencies that are running it now, but it's still not very much. So we're not sure if you guys are just looking at it to see what it looks like. And so if we were interested, there's a chance, that maybe at some point this would mean something, but right now there's nothing that analyzes costs by RUG category at a state level. It's only that, you have the certain acuities for the quality withholds, which is a whole nother different report than this. So that was another one. And then the program, but basically all the days reports is what this is. So there's 3 versions of the days reports based on program specialized, which just means include the transition, MFP, self-determination stuff, and then a statewide one, which you guys don't see anyway. That these are counting the days in the programs, which again isn't a thing anymore. That was back in when we got paid by the day, pre-capitation, and there's literally a handful of times since 2020 that these have been run either. And then the last one is a report that initial assessment by RUG group category. Everyone is using the monthly profile and not the initial assessment one. I'm not sure anymore why that was created in the first place, but it was basically get me everybody's initial assessment and put them as counts on the report. And there's no real use case that we know of for that anymore, because like I said, the monthly profile is being used to know, who actively as of this date ranges in each group. So we don't believe that that's necessary either. Any thoughts or concerns if we remove those?
Hi, Melissa. This is Martha with Region 8. In regards to the RUG report with the actual cost, I wonder if you might just want to mention, or maybe you already have, to MDHHS. I know there's been some um, discussion about uh, RUG with residential care, and so I just want to make sure that that's not a report that they would be utilizing in doing any investigation.
Okay. I guess I'm not, did you mean that they're comparing a cost at a cost per day level?
I'm not exactly sure what they were doing. I just wanted to mention that you might want to just make sure that's not something that they're utilizing.
Okay. Thank you.
Melissa. Hey, Melissa, it's Andrew from TSA. When you're talking about the specialized days report, is that the enrollments tab, specialized tab?
Yes, and just the days one, not the enrollment or enrollment count ones or the profile or what, there's a whole bunch of reports there. It's just the days version.
Oh, I got you. The check mark at the bottom. Because we kind of like looking at number of days in a certain program status or a care
Okay.
setting status. So if you can get that from the specialized enrollment, it should be fine. Thank you
Okay.
for clarifying.
We'll look into that. I'm not sure off the top of my head if we track that at that level, but it could be a reason to keep around the specialized one, but maybe not the program.
We also use specialized to look at hospitalization dates. I'm not sure if that's what you're referencing there.
Okay. Yeah.
That's one of the main purposes is to catch like the 30 days or out of service area. Or if we have like we're using like other care setting for a specific reason, but then perhaps forget to take them out. Like we want to hold services for some reason. It kind of helps us catch that.
So that you could get off the enrollment report for sure, that last part. It'd be if you need the number of days, and that I'm not sure if enrollment report has off the top of my head.
Melissa, the enrollment report does have days included.
So that if they pulled for the different care setting, they would see the days for that.
Correct.
Awesome. Is there any other purpose for the days report than that the people are using? Okay. Any other of the other that are listed there, the waiver summary and detail that goes along with that summary or the initial assessment by RUG group? Okay. All right, so we'll investigate with the state about the one. And then if you guys want to take a look at the specialized enrollment report that are using it for counting those things and see if that does accomplish what you'd like to do, if you'd send us a note, that would be great. And then we won't be concerned about it. Or send us a note vice versa that yes, the day's report format is what you would prefer, and we could keep the specialized one around and just get rid of the other ones. Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and hop back up to the very top. Those of you that aren't involved in billing or non-services, you are welcome to stay, or if you'd like to hang up, that is fine too. All right, so billing. So one of the things that we wanted to communicate is that we no longer will have what's called vendor billing, because in the, well, SIS 4.0, but 4.1, we are combining both vendor billing and the MISIS billing into one component that all agent and vendor users will be using the same billing module. Of course, there will be different permissions allowed for different things that agencies can do a lot more than vendors can, et cetera. But basically, it's going to allow you guys to, share the same information and go to one place, to one-stop shop for everything, and vendors will be able to see what they need to see, but it'll be, much the same as what you guys are seeing. So, and this is just a screenshot of kind of the selector that we're developing, where, depending on who you are, you'll have agency and vendor drop downs. CIMC is the agent one. You guys probably will not have that. It's not a thing. You'll just have the vendor drop down. And so would vendors if they serve multiple vendors. Otherwise, it'll be read only, just like it is to them today. And you select the month on the right, just like you're used to in vendor billing. And then it would list either you can see all the people, for that month, or search for certain participants. And there's a bunch of filters here. And that's kind of where our focus is going to be to begin with. So in the information, it's going to vary, and we're going to be asking questions about what information should be shown, et cetera, as we go through. But the other piece that's on each one of these pages is the unsent bills information, of how many bills are unsent and what the cost in units are. And this is going to be the new methodology for vendors to submit the bills. So right now they have it on the left-hand side, like you have the pending review of bills that need to be approved. They had an unsent bills one, but it's now going to be on the bottom of the screen. So it's a little bit different, but a lot the same. So with this release, we've realized we need to redesign everything and the workflow in order to, make it more streamlined and, cohesive, so data entry is is simple for everyone. So we're talking about several things, and we kind of came to the conclusion that instead of having two separate places to do the posting and reviewing the bills, we are going to combine them. So both functionalities can be done from the same tab. And it's part of efforts to facilitate your guys' long awaited request, to make it easier to approve agent entered bills. So when you're using the system, the vendor billing versus MISIS, that it's easier for you. And as well as there's the another piece that I just mentioned later, I believe, but that it then makes it so that you and the vendors are both seeing the same screens. Based on permissions, of course, you'll have different fields enabled, but you'd be at least looking at the same thing at the same time. It wouldn't be confusing that they're on the post page and you're looking at the review page. And, there's just been a bunch of issues with trying to communicate when there's the two places and they can't see what you're doing, et cetera. So, so the plan is that we're going to have a main billing tab, in which, if I'm going to scroll back up here, so on the left hand side there's this billing thing that'll be in line just like your other options are, that will take you to this bill selector page. And that's where you'll be able to do your work by selecting the appropriate filter and then choosing the participant service. And so there's a few filters there: not posted, not sent, not reviewed, and all. And then once you select that, you'll go into, once you select a participant service, you'll go into the bill detail just like you do today in vendor billing. It'll look very similar to your review detail screen that you now see in vendor billing. It says vendor view. Oops, we missed that correction, but in vendor billing. The bill detail page will still have the same things like the authorized, posted, approved columns, but only agent users would be able to edit the approved columns and the notes, of course, whereas vendor users would be only be able to update the posted columns and vendor notes. The other difference that we plan to do is that we're going to include a save button. Right now, everything automatically saves when both units and costs are posted to a date. So before there was a, and then this is in the posting. So if you don't normally have never done bill posting, then you're not familiar with this. But when you posted things and both those columns were present, it was automatically putting the bill in the background. And you could take it back out by taking out units or cost per unit and it would go away. But it was basically saving things as it went. And so there was a post button before. And there was an approve button in the review interface, but that acted like a save button too. So it's a little bit different. But we're now going to change it so that there is no more of that automated saving things until you're done. And so then you'd actually click a save button that would then validate, save all the data. So that would look similar to this page here. So it's very similar to what you're used to with the information about the person and program details, and the notes are up there. Fund source is now going to be at a different level because of how we're going to be posting against a service definition line now and not on the services. So there will be no more of picking a fund source, which I don't know if we covered in this. We have a lot more billing conversations to happen, but because it's just there's so much. So we're going to be going through a lot more of the detail in the next design call. Today's is mostly revolved around getting you acclimated to the new screens and figuring out these filters and non-service issues. So anyway, so this information isn't changed too much, but we've added a bunch of details. We'll talk about the service event details on the next design call for sure. But otherwise, this is kind of the new way we would look at it. So the one thing we want to know is the biggest change that we are proposing here is that we would lend, if we do it this way, that we're thinking that you guys would see the same screens as the vendors, that the vendors would be able to see the authorized units and authorized cost per unit in that same screen that they're posting in. So this would be their posting screen as much as it would be your review screen. And this is something that's been requested from us from many agencies. Other people, when we first did vendor billing, nobody wanted to show that information because they were scared they would game the system. Technically, they have all that information at their fingertips anyways, from the service authorizations, and calendar reports are kind of almost the same thing. So in that vein, we're not as concerned about putting it here and showing it to them. But we want to make sure that you guys agree that that's okay for them to see that here, and it makes things consistent so that there's no issues with what you see versus what they see, which has been an issue in the current vendor billing world. So we're just kind of proposing that we just everybody sees the same thing, just your ability based on permissions to change fields would be different. And so we're asking everyone, is there any objections to allowing vendors to see the authorized units and cost per unit when they're posting their bills? I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Good.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with making that available to them. Would notice of non-service be something that'd be also displayed on this?
We're going to get to that later. Hold that thought.
Thanks.
Yep. So I'm not hearing any objections. I don't know if some of you are not as familiar and can't really speak to this, or we're hoping there's no objections, because we think it'll be cleaner for everybody and easier to talk about.
I think it's a really great idea. One of the things that I see happening with our vendors is they get confused about the calendar. Because it has limited spots, and then you have to add the note underneath it. I think that would help them.
Okay.
I agree. I think this will be definitely a nice enhancement for the vendors to see.
Oh, I also should put a disclaimer in here. The images you're seeing are total mock-ups, and the colors, the thing, it's all subject to change. So, it's not as pretty as it's going to be, but it's where we're at the moment. All right, so we'll move on then. So the next thing is the not posted filter. So the not posted filter is meant to include all participants who have planned services in the selected month according to the scheduled service events and exceptions that were added in the service schedule. So when a vendor user will post vendor bills for a given participant service for the selected month, then it will no longer appear under the not posted filter. So that means though, that if the user didn't post all the units for the month at once, then they will need to use the search for participant under the not sent or all filter in order to post the rest of the units. So best practice is to post it all at the time, but we do know that there are situations that, you know, you have some vendors that need a quicker turnaround because they're a smaller shop and need the payroll sooner to pay their people. And that's fine. The system will allow for it just like it does today. It literally, that part wouldn't change because right now we have it in the same type thing where it not posted anything in the month posts, it's no longer in the not posted. So to the vendors, this wouldn't be a change at all. So we think that that's okay. We don't know how else to do it. Honestly, we thought about it of how we would know that they're done posting for their month or not, because it, you know, for anything that's flexible, I mean, how do you know that they're not supposed to or are? And it became kind of cumbersome to think about. So anyway, the question we have is, and we have this for almost every filter, is sorting options. We initially thought to sort by participant last name, first name, and then Compass ID in case that there's more than one person with the same name. But then we're not sure if you would like to see this sorted by the service code combo or by the service short name. So here's two examples here. These are two different
Bro,
service
you
specialists in
heard
mind.
it seconds ago. It's just like,
It might be an Allen wrench.
So I don't know, we thought about this. It's for you and for vendors. We're not sure if there's a preference on sorting by whichever for, both parties it'd be the same throughout. We kind of went, I don't know, let's ask.
So I think I might be misunderstanding. Are you saying that you're trying to determine whether to leave the code and the description there, or take out the code and leave the description, or maybe I'm
No.
not
They both be there just like it looks right now. It's the sorting of it. So if you had, for instance, well, that's not, I'm like trying to think of one. I wish we had an example of one up here, honestly. But that there's two code combos that it put like the H 2015 underneath it, for instance, like S on top and H because the names were ordered by, something that starts with A versus something that starts with Z, so it's ordered by the name, or should it be ordered by the code combination? How would you like to see it?
By that, you mean participant name?
No, the codes. So, man, I'm really struggling with trying to figure out a code combination.
I think I understand what you're trying to say.
Formal will be the practices that you're currently using.
So,
How about,
Sorry.
Melissa,
yeah,
how about B4150 with the 8003? So the
Well-
enter formula with the non-emergency guy that you have there.
well, that would be still in order by both, because B and enter roll
that's true.
on top. Yeah, I'm really struggling because they're not alphabetical already in order, but I got no, that doesn't work either. I don't know. I can't come up with one, but there are ones that it would push the, A codes might be at the end of the list compared to S codes or T codes or whatnot, if the name is in order by that.
Well, I'm in my head thinking that it would make more sense to do it by the code because that's where your eyes go first.
Okay.
And I agree.
Okay. I mean, that was my inclination too, but I don't do this all the time, and maybe people have really gotten used to those shortened service names, and it's helpful. We don't use it that way, so. Okay. Anybody think that it should be by service name instead?
Oh, we have a question in chat from Mork.
Okay.
How do the vendors see it now when there are multiple service codes to build?
Plug in that laptop.
That's a darn good question. I am not certain off the top of my head. I would.
actually just see the
Could have-
service codes. They don't see the short name.
So.
Yeah,
so
okay,
there's
that makes sense.
aspect of it.
So yeah, I think we don't include the description right now, and we're making it more user-friendly to show descriptions on it. I think that they see the descriptions now when they go into the bill detail, but not in the selector.
Because again,
That
it's
is correct.
always
Okay.
the try it.
So it would be consistent then, I guess, if we use code combo to what we do today,
integrity
but
of data
they don't have that name
and
right now then
availability
to make that
those
decision otherwise.
three things
And then Mork says keep it by
the
service
security.
code. So sorting by the service code.
Okay. All right, so we'll just go with that then. The other question on this is we were struggling with what fields to include. So we've got on here Compass ID and SDL, the service definition line, AKA care plan line number, because they're going to post against one of those now. And we're going to display the county and fund source. Just again, I think we have county now. And then authorized units and authorized cost were the other two columns we were thinking of including on this for lack of anything else, because nothing's posted yet. So there's not going to be any posted units or reviewed units or anything like that. Would that be helpful? Should we not include that? Is there other fields that is important, especially to people when they're going to go post the bills for the first time, that should be included?
I think authorized unit and authorized cost is good to have.
Yeah. And I'm thinking too now, I feel like the care setting status, sometimes I feel like that shows up too, like they're not, where they were during that time. So if it showed up hospitalization.
That's actually on the detail. So this is before you get to that stage.
Oh,
So
I'm sorry. Okay.
that's right here. So when you
Gotcha.
start getting into the daily detail,
Mhm.
and then this is more of before you get to that to help identify what you're posting against. I don't know. I don't think it's going to help identify anything, but it might be nice to have there.
I'd like to see or consider seeing date of birth there, as the Compass ID is probably a number that, I would just say our providers are probably more familiar with their date of births than the Compass ID, so it'd be an easier transition for them to see that, and then
Okay.
using the Compass ID as, a last resort.
Okay, because the Compass ID will basically replace last 4 SSN today. So that's kind of where we got it, that, put that in from.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I agree that I didn't even think about date of birth, honestly. Is there, is county important in here? Or maybe do we put Compass ID there?
Fund source could be important. I don't know that county is important for billing practices that I've seen.
Are you removing last 4 digits of SOCH?
Yes, because SSN will not be present for every person in the system after this release. It's Compass ID is going to replace that as the key identifier for a person. Social number will still be there, but it will not be used throughout all the screens in the system. There's very few places you'll see SSN in the future.
Will that be in where the agent goes to approve it?
No, you'll use Compass ID. Everything that you're used to using SSN for, and now you'll replace that with Compass ID. That's going to be the identifier in the system. The huge thought process change, but SSN will not be present in most of the records. Anywhere that you have a dummy SSN today, you will not have an SSN in the system. It's going to be gone with this release.
And
It's
since
that
we're on
whole
it, go ahead.
Oh, it's just part of that whole effort, like the insurance companies did to all like the cards and things, is to get rid of that, key identifying information off most people's radars and keep it only where it's necessary to show it or deal with it. Like it'll still be part of, the claims encounters and eligibility request type detail to verify that you've got the right one. But in things like billing, it's not necessary. So we're replacing it with Compass ID because that is going to be the person identifier at that point.
So while we're on, this is John from Region 4. So since we're talking about social I want to just confirm that the Compass ID will be, or rather the social security number will still be in a table that we're able to link to the Compass ID. So if we have internal scripts that we could we can remove the SSN from the report so that I can present the Compass ID if needed. But if we have a report that does pull based on there's only just going to be minor modifications needed for that.
Right. SSN will still remain in the participant table, but it may be blank because of dummy SSNs. So anybody that had dummy SSN, there will be no SSN. So if you have things that prompt for an SSN and you're using it for, potential people that may not have, you not have the SSN yet for, or you'll never get the SSN, then you're going to want to consider changing those to Compass ID. But other ones that, yes, if you know the SSN, you'll be able to link it to
Beautiful,
show
thank you.
or prompt. Mhm.
We have a comment in chat from Deanna. She says, I don't think the county is needed.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just concerned that if we eliminate Compass ID here, that eventually once people get used to it, they're going to wish that it was there, because it is going to be the identifier to, you could send it to them and say, no, for this, Compass ID, and you can search by it and things like that. So versus using names of people that would be identifying.
What does SDL stand for?
Service definition line. It's the replacement of care plan line number.
So is that Compass ID just a randomly assigned number?
Yep. It's generated when it'll be generated for everybody when we convert everybody into having one. And then anytime you add a new person, it'll get a new Compass ID.
Yeah, I would get rid of county, but I do kind of like fund source, and but then I would add date of birth.
Okay. So what I'm thinking of doing is, I'm not sure. We'll probably want to play with how it looks, but either in where the Compass ID and the county are, either keeping Compass ID where it's at and putting date of birth in place of county, or flip-flopping the two, because we see issues with like trying to see the data, and we play with how it looks, because the numbers all kind of run together. So it might be better to put the date of birth where the Compass ID is, just because it's going to have the slashes, to compare to the service definition line underneath it, so it's easier to spot. But it also, so I'm thinking that might be what we would do. But yeah, I think I'm in agreement after having this conversation. And fund source is only needed there because they'll otherwise not know the difference between service definition lines to post against. A lot of times they'll only see one, of course. This example here is rare, right? But there may be some days of the month that are paid for, because like the nursing home day would be, a different fund source than the irregular that they'd have to post against. But which is also where the authorized units and costs could come in play, because you'll see that there's very little for that, and they'll be like, oh, that's the one-off. Okay, I know what that is, versus the main rest of the month got paid for. Okay, so I guess what I'm hearing is get rid of county, add date of birth, and we may flip around Compass ID and date of birth in the list, depending on what looks better to the eyeballs.
Would there be any way to merge though, like the participant service date of birth, like where you would see last name, first name, date of birth right there in the same column?
Yeah, that's an option too. I'm just thinking right now how I don't know it without being the programmer of the issues that might be with formatting, because date of birth is not text, and to do that formatting right, it might be tricky. But I mean, that's why it's usually separated on most things, but it might be fine. Are you saying that because you'd like to keep county?
No, I was just thinking of, if we were thinking about ways to keep it easy on the eyes, and I was thinking like, what if you saw, those together in the first column? I don't know. I was just,
Yeah. I guess the same could be said for Compass ID.
yeah.
Mhm. Okay, all good ideas. Anything else that we haven't talked about that people think would be helpful to be here for knowing what to post against? And remember, you could be the one posting. It might not be just the vendor. So if there's anything you guys want to, um, if you're posting as the vendor, then you would be using this screen as well. Okay. All right. So the next one is the not sent filter. So this is going to include all participant services for the selected month where there's at least one bill line without a sent date. So meaning they haven't sent it as in a batch yet. And of course, where at least one unit has been posted. So aka there's a bill in that month. So basically it just lists all of the unsent bills that are going to be batched up when the send button is pressed. So right now, this was all included in an info as part of the send to agent functionality for the vendors. And so we're basically proposing that we have it in this kind of thing. So this is kind of the same question, sorting options. I would think we'd be consistent at this point with sorting options on all of them to be by service code and not, or service code combo, I should say, versus the name. But then the other question is the level of detail in here. I would assume you'd want also the same changes of date of birth and information being added to remove county. But what about the posted units and cost being here seems helpful. Is there anything else that would be helpful for them to know that these haven't been sent yet? That they posted, but they haven't sent it in a batch to you yet?
What about the month of service?
That it's interesting that it's not showing on the screenshot, but it's actually going to be like right here already. Because it's something just like they do today where you select the month when you go in. It's going to be that same type of thing, I think. I'm not actually sure. There's more to talk about that we haven't got to, and I don't remember right now if it's going to be in this one or if it's in the next design call. So we'll just keep going on that part, but assume month is at the top right now. So the next part of this is that about this unsent bills bar at the bottom of the page. It will always appear no matter what filter is selected, but we're only going to show this send button to vendor users when the not sent filter is displayed so that they can see what they're going to send right there. And it will then bring up that certification pop-up the vendors are required to submit because there's policy requirements that they have to authorize, yada, yada, that this is accurate stuff. So when you're on the unsent bills page, it's going to look like this. If you're on any other page, it's going to just be an arrow like up above here. Let's see, where was that? This. So there'll be an arrow that will basically, if you click that arrow, it'll take you to the unsent bills page, filter, I should say, which then it will show this. So we're basically making them, we can't send them unless they're on this not sent filter so that they're seeing what they're about to send. So Any questions, any of that? Any other suggestions for unsent filter before I move to the next one?
Melissa, when there is a list, say, of hundreds of people, will it be separated by pages, or will this remain like continuous where I could scroll down through all of them?
It would have to be pages, I believe, on the all filter, but I don't know about the other three, how we want to handle it. I mean, the only issue is if you load them all at the same time, it could take longer to get to even see anything, right? Because it's going to have to pull all that data and choose how to display it and sort it, so it takes longer versus doing the pages. It automatically, pushes stuff off to the side and figures it out as it goes. So I guess that's a question. That's a good question that I don't think we've gotten there yet. What do you think?
I have a preference. What you say about it taking longer to load makes a lot of sense. It was just a curiosity mainly. Yeah, some kind of pages is fine, especially if that's better for loading.
I mean, because some of your bigger vendors that are supplying, tens of thousands of dollars worth of service a month, that could be a really long list.
Yeah, I think of it for our internal billing that we do. Sometimes it's every waiver participant. And
Right.
just, I've got some ways of finding if there's one missing from our posting based on how many entries per page there are. I can start narrowing it down that way. So I'm just thinking forward of how I'll do that in the future.
Okay.
But it sounds like pages is better for the system also. So
Yeah, and I mean, right now we're looking only at a month at a time per event per vendor, so it may not be too bad. So we can look at that, and if we're not seeing too much issues with the load time, then we can then do this. Just allow you to scroll through the whole page.
Melissa, Deanna asks, will there be something to show that we have reviewed the invoice?
Yes, we haven't got there yet.
Melissa, I'm
Yeah.
wondering about the T2022 when we have to post those.
Mhm.
Currently, when we do it through MISIS, it'll tell you right away whether the client was home or not, what their status was for that month. But in this situation, it wouldn't do that. You'd actually have to go in to figure that out, correct?
Right. This would be like this page would replace like your finding the person page. Like when you click the drop down to type in their information, this page will replace that. And then when you click on that and go into it, then you see which days they're in the hospital and or wherever, home.
Okay. So it would take actually a little bit longer than just posting in MISIS, because I just pull them all up and then just go right down the list and
Oh yeah, because you could do it by service code. That's
Right.
something, yeah, we should consider. We've got a better way to do that. That's a good thought. Well, I guess I'm just thinking about this as I was typing up a note for it. So you guys are the agency for T2022. Is that usually the only service that your agency, at least that vendor that you've set up for T2022, is that usually the only service for it that you have to post for them?
not for us, not for Region 10.
Okay.
Not for Region 9 either.
Okay. Because I'm wondering then if we have another filter in there for service code, then you could then filter it down to just those people for the month to post them all at once. I don't know if it's in this call, but I'll bring it up since we're talking something about it. Is that what we're planning to do is on this bill detail page where we've got, all your posting, that once you've saved it, you can actually use an arrow key to go to the next one. So you wouldn't have to go back to that main screen and keep going back and forth screens. It would just go to the next person ready to post. So that would be, I think, extremely helpful in your posting of T 2022 to just keep going through them all. And it would
Oh,
be
yeah.
based on the filter that you had before.
That would be wonderful.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, like I said, we have so much going on with questions for this that we started out with filters and yeah. So I don't know if it's in here because I don't remember what we did for this one versus the next one. So we'll see, but that's the plan.
Melissa?
Mhm.
Would there be a possibility to maybe include a fund source filter in there?
Yeah, what's the concern?
Well, we do different, like I know we do some billing to, for our presumptive eligibility to a different fund code. Under the same provider ID.
Would they be posting those at the same time as other funded services?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Right now I have a different staff doing those too.
Oh, so that's an internal thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm just thinking, fund source might be something that could come in handy in a couple different areas to be able to filter by.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think that'll be an issue to add, or I'm glad you're bringing those things up. So right now I'm hearing we need a service code filter, a fund source filter. I already made a note that search participants, I believe, but I'm not 100% certain that they'll search for both either like person name or Compass ID. I think, because that's how we've done it elsewhere in the system so far. So I think that would be consistent. Okay. All right, going back down. All right, wait. Okay. Not reviewed filter. So this is going to include all the participant services for the selected month where the service definition line has any bill records with a sent date, but no approved units. So there's a note here, when bills are reviewed and approved, we require that users have to enter approved units anywhere there were units that were posted. So basically like you do today, you have to do the whole page and then you approve the whole page. So that means that you can't approve half the units for a given month, because as soon as anything got approved, then they're all considered, then it approved everything that was posted on that page. So that's basically all that's all saying. So the not reviewed filter is very different from the rest of the filters in that this is where you would go to know, okay, the vendor sent me a batch, I need to go approve it. And so you would go into that given month for that vendor. There could be multiple batches if they submitted more than one at a time. So it's going to be ordered first by batch ID for sure, because that would be the order you'd want to do them in. It would include who sent them, and then the Compass IDs here, what date they sent them, and then the service code combo, the fund source service definition line. The other things that we thought would be helpful was the posted cost, and then the not reviewed units and not reviewed cost. So you could see that, how much got done as you go, well, actually, once something gets approved, that would all go away. So I'm not even sure not reviewed cost makes any sense here, because this would always be a number. It would match the posted cost. So I'm now, once we think these things out loud, we're like, wait, what? So first question was related to sorting, and I assume we'll do the same changes that we'll sort by name, and then the same thing we did before with then adding. I assume we want to add date of birth, remove. We don't have county here anyway, but I assume you want date of birth here too as well, correct?
I would imagine it'd be helpful, yes.
Okay. What about, I mean, am I crazy? Not reviewed units and costs don't make sense here because that's where we're at. That would match the posted. So I would see maybe putting posted units on here, which is not for, I'm not sure why that got missed, but
Would enchant instead of posted, would it be better to have approved cost?
well, this would only be there once something's approved, it'd no longer be in this filter anymore. So that's why the approved wouldn't be there. It would then be in the all filter at that point. Once something's approved, it goes away. Just like it does today when you're approving a batch that you come back to the screen and that person that you were just on is gone. You're on the next person
I
who's at the
see.
top.
Is this a view that up for the vendors or for agencies or both?
Both. Basically what we're proposing is everything matches. The only thing that'll be different is who can do what.
Okay.
Unless there's something that you want, that you need, that you don't want to see the vendors to see. That's, that's, we'd be looking for that too.
This is Sherry from Region 4. I like the way it is presented here.
Okay.
The batch IDs that we're looking at on this screen were different months. Would they still be shown together like this, or would the month up in that upper right area you indicated kind of change as you clicked on one of the batch IDs?
Right. So this would actually be only the batches for that month.
Okay.
So the next question actually is related to, so there are months that have multiple batches not reviewed. So that's what this is. So, maybe they sent the first 4 people and then we're holding back stuff and then sent the next 5 people and they ended up being in different batches for the same month. That's what this is representing. Now, other months would be, you'd see them differently, that you'd go in and you'd be on a different month to review that month. But I'm now looking at this question. So the reviewing months there's a possibility they'll submit multiple for the same when the first batch hadn't been reviewed yet. Okay. Would you want to only approve one batch at a time? Okay. So this is asking, okay, this is what this image is down below. So this is in the case, so not when I do that, the scenario I just said where there's like 4 people in the first batch and another 5 people in the next batch, what could happen is they could post a partial month and then post the next part of the month, send that batch, then post the next part of the month in a separate batch before you even reviewed it. And so the question is that right now you pull it up by a batch ID at a time, right? And approve that batch at a time. But what the screen shows is can show you all of the batch numbers, that were submitted. So this one's for 4/1, this is for 4/22 data service, or sent date, sorry. Data service is not on here. Oh, because this is the top level. So let's pretend that they're two different days of services in the same month. They were both sent at the same time. The question is that I'm trying to really collect myself because this is a complicated one. If you have let's say that this was submitted on the 1st for March, so this is a March 1st bill, and then this is going to contain March 15th on it. Do you want to be able to approve those all at the same time? And because that you hadn't approved this one yet when you got this batch also came in, or would you want them separate? And the thing to consider is the invoice numbers, because if we let you approve them all at once, then they would all share the same invoice number. And I don't think you want to do that for different batches, but I don't know that either.
This is John from Region 4, and I would say that we use the sent date as consideration for processing bills. So if they compliantly submit an invoice, on 4/1, but then 4/22 wasn't submitted until the end of the month, like it shows there, we may not put a preference on that second invoice for that. So I would say for that reason there, I would not want to clump batches.
Okay.
This is
Agreed.
Carrie, and I don't think we should either.
Mm-mm.
Okay. So one batch at a time.
Correct.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. We were thinking so, but we wanted to ask the question in case you were like, oh, well, let's do it all at once. But then I was thinking invoice numbers and went, oh, wait a minute. I don't think that'll work very well. Okay. So that answers that.
Melissa?
Yeah.
Brenda Barrett says she likes the not reviewed units, but don't think the not reviewed cost is needed for the filter guy above. Sorry.
So what I think we're going to change it to is because this is the not reviewed filter. And so the not reviewed filter means that nothing has been approved for the month for that person batch. So in this instance, they would always match each other, the posted and the not reviewed. So I think, we can just put the posted amounts on there because once it's reviewed, it won't show up here anymore in this filter. So I think we made a mistake in including that. So we're going to remove not reviewed units and not reviewed cost and just leave them at the posted units and posted cost because those are what you're going to review. Unless you'd like to name it not reviewed there. But it's the same thing.
What about instances where they're in the middle of reviewing things and get interrupted and forget to go back and they're still there to be finished?
Once they approve a page, that comes off the not reviewed filter.
Okay.
So, and you can't do partial at a time. You'd have to, if you have 30 days in a month, you can't approve 15 of them and leave the other 15 for later. You have to do it all at one time. So you wouldn't have clicked the approve button yet to move them out of the not reviewed category for all 30 of them. That's why I'm like, this is kind of weird that it got set up this way. I think Emily's in Italy on a lovely vacation and she did this at the last minute. So I'm blaming her. But I reviewed it, so it's also my fault. But so I think that's where we messed this up thinking about it.
Yeah, I think we kept it there because that's the way it is in billing today.
So I guess that's the question. I mean, they are literally going to be the same thing in the screen, the posted versus not reviewed. We can call it not reviewed units and cost if that resonates better than posted units and cost. But in this filter, they would be the exact same thing of data wise.
Is it maybe showing this way based on just that total of the posted cost on next to the batch ID? So the scenario that was mentioned of partially reviewed, if you would review one participant, those totals up on the batch ID line could be changing.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Although the individual people would not.
Okay. That's interesting. Okay. Yeah. Would you want to do that? Would you want to see that? Would that be helpful to see that there's a grand total of this for the batch posted, but only so much has been not reviewed?
Yes.
Okay. So, all right. So maybe that was what she meant, but then it's kind of goofy then why it's at the detail level too. Okay. So, all right. I thank you for pointing that out. That I think is exactly what she meant by it. Um, okay. All right. So I think we'll make another mock-up of how that would look. Um, all right, here's the question. So right now, when you approve bills in vendor billing, we lock down those units and cost and basically the whole page so that you can't touch it again, because at that point it gets sent to MISIS and MISIS then has to do it. Well, there is no MISIS anymore. So the question is, do we need to lock the approved values after the bills have been entered and saved? Because maybe you made a mistake in approving and you'd want to make changes or edits after approving, because and as long as the claims and encounters haven't been sent yet, because once they're sent, we can't just let you change it. However, we then thought about it a little bit more and went, wait, that could cause issues, because if you've already sent the approved values to the accounting department to pay the vendor, then if you changed it after the fact, then it wouldn't result in an edit to track. So then the vendor would never get paid that different amount on accident. So then we talked ourselves back out of maybe we do lock it down still, and then everything after that is treated as an edit. What do you guys think about that?
Do you save based on a batch or save based on a service definition line? Because I've had a few examples in recent billing where I put in the wrong SOCH number, say, and I had to reach out to you guys to, or not SOCH, invoice number. And so I had to reach out to you guys to correct that for me. But I was still in the middle of the batch. So if the batch hasn't been submitted, I'd like the ability to edit the bills. I see the advantage for that. I understand the problem, but I think as long as I haven't hit submit batch, that having staff be able to edit the values would be super helpful, because we use the reports then to inform our fiscal team, and that by having the accurate data in there, just simply allows me to not have to get second data sheets from MISIS for the corrected values.
So that's an interesting thing. Right now, there is nothing that says, hey, I'm done with approving this batch. It's just done when, you've gotten through the whole list kind of thing, right? Versus, when you post, there's the send to the agent to say now it's created a batch for it, but there's nothing right now that says I'm done. So we'd have to add something to do that, or we'd base it off when the last one is for that batch gone through. Somehow we'd then lock it down. But that makes me a little worried, because is there situations where you may not have approved the whole batch because you're waiting on some information, but have still sent it on for payment?
Current practices don't. I mean, you probably could submit it with the paperwork for an unfinished batch, but it's our policy to satisfy a batch before submitting it to the next level.
This is Terry. I agree with John. That's what we do as well. We do not submit anything for payment and accounting until the whole batch is approved and finalized. So the one thing that when we post in Mices right now, we have the option to verify after the fact, which is what I like, because if you post and make a mistake, you can go in and edit it and fix it before you finalize everything. And then once we know that everything matches and it's ready to go, then we verify it. And once it's verified, and then we submit it to accounting for payment, and anything beyond that is an edit. Within vendor billing, as soon as you approve something, it verifies, which does cause some issues, because if we did realize we made a mistake, we have to edit a verified bill, which is fine because then we'll have the reports to do it. But where it gets tricky for me personally is once you edit, so we do the premium pay after the fact. So if we have one edited bill, I can't do a premium pay in a batch because there's one edited bill. So maybe if there was some kind of option where once we've gone through the bill posting process in the vendor billing, that we would also have the option at the end to verify once we're completely ready to send that on for payment and we know everything is the way it should be, and then we verify like we do in Mices now.
Okay.
The way you connected it is similar to a send to agent on the posting side made some sense to me, Melissa, just because we would have that lockdown, so we couldn't be doing it weeks later, forgetting an edit paperwork process. But also there are those times where you go through 50 participants where it's all pretty easy approve, and then all of a sudden you click approve and now you've got an edit so it would be nice if there's that even brief grace period.
Okay. Interesting.
This is Sherry from Region 4. I also agree with Terry. It'd be nice to be able to verify at the end.
So do you, I mean, do you want it to be like that send to agent that we have, another filter that we'd say, in theirs, it's not sent. I mean, it's kind of the same thing, but I don't know what you'd call it. Not finalized. I don't know what the heck we'd call it, but so that then you would then have a button like you did here that said, I'm done.
Even if it was called verified, because once you verify that everything matches and it's what you want to send to accounting, you've corrected anything that maybe was entered wrong, you're verifying that it is 100% ready to go.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out how that can fit into the thing, because I just realized we can't really use this per se, because this isn't by batch type thing. That's just for the whole screen. So, all right, but I hear what you're saying. It sounds like it's going to be needed. And then basically we would then switch around like the claims and counter processing to say you can't, the unverified bills report would remain basically, but based on this kind of thing. Okay. All right. I'll take that back to Emily for her to think about, and we can come back to that on our next call. Okay. Then the last filter was the all filter. And so basically this gets you everything ever you wanted to see for the month for that vendor. I would think again, the same sorting options. Let's look here. So we need to add date of birth when we remove county. So this one has on it the sent dates, which this isn't by batch, so I'm not sure how we're doing that. So would that be helpful though to see a sent date in here?
Yes.
What would you like to see, the most recent one? Because if there's multiple batches for the month,
Is that
it
the
could-
date they're sent to the agency?
yes,
Yes, I like that.
would it be the
Agreed.
most recent one, the earliest one? What would you think?
Wouldn't you want them all? So shouldn't this be possibly a, oh, so this, the parent level to this view here, would be, you could see all the batches. So we're inside a batch right now. Is that true? Looking at this?
No, you would not be inside a batch. So this last one, we were inside of a batch because that's part of your approval process to go through a batch.
Uh-huh.
But this is now, let's go back to everybody. Let's pull up everything for Jackie, for this service, for, for Fund 100. And then when you open this up, it would take you back to that bill detail page,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm bringing back up here, that the batch ID would be listed in each individual row that had a
Yeah.
batch. So technically there could be multiple batches for those vendors that, post at separate times in the month. So that's why I'm asking, will it be most recent or?
Oh,
And is this view too, would this also have the month
Yes,
in the upper right?
yes.
Okay.
well, I agree with John that we need to see when all of them are sent because we're only going to be paying ones that are going to be compliant with our contract.
Yeah, I
They
think
only-
all batches there sorted by batch and with the sent date on that, and with all the approved units and stuff. I think that's all helpful to inform.
I guess I'm gonna go, so that last comment about batches and what's been approved, this isn't going to be related to like any reports. This is just, whenever I want to try to find a bill in the system, I would go to this page to try to figure out, find, what happened with Jackie for this service.
Mhm.
And I could then pull up everything about that month. So this is not part of the approval process at all.
Yeah,
This is just another way to find clients.
I think adding invoice number might be helpful.
Well, that would have the same issue as sent date because there could be multiple for the same service month.
Well, so for each batch would have its own line. Each code, each batch, each invoice, each sent date,
Okay.
and then the data based on that.
So I guess if that's the case, then when you bring it up, are you going to be disoriented in the fact that it's all now going to be this with multiple batch IDs?
Yes, you will.
Because you would think you'd want a complete picture to see everything at once. And that's what this is meant to be.
Melissa, do they have individual batch IDs as we currently do? I can't see it on the
Yeah.
screen. It's too small, but
Yeah, it's right. Yeah, it's right. This batch ID column.
okay, I see it now. Because that's what we use as our invoice number now. So I'd like to see that continue on. I don't know if that's the issue, what we're talking about, but we do use that as the invoice number.
If this is the end goal to have them merged, then having them all there wouldn't be as necessary. Where it could be confusing is if you were trying to I mean, I guess if it's all going to show right here on this type of map, then
Because the theory is, I guess I should keep going, is that this screen would be used also for adding all of the edits as well. So what the purpose is that I would bring up this person, and if I have to make a bill edit, I would, use that all filter, find them, and then come in here and we're still working on this, and this is next design call level. But add a row if I need to add, additional units or whatnot. And or take away or whatever the new amount will be, to handle it that way versus it wouldn't be a whole nother editing module. We're still working out kinks on that because we're not sure we're going to be able to get away with it, but we're trying to make it as streamlined as possible. So that's what this was all about, was set to, it's like, I don't care about batch. I don't care about anything except for I need to find out what the heck the state of this person for the month and see what's going on.
So if this is the goal here, if this is the end view, I'd like to see fund source shown in this, because we have a few.
Yeah, that would be on the end at the top. Yeah.
Well, okay.
Because now in the new system, fund source isn't selectable by a day anymore. It's we're at the service definition line number, so everything will be
okay.
So it wouldn't put together all the different fund sources.
So Melissa, you said you would edit from the screen a particular day if you need to edit additional amounts. Would you be able to change the fund source then from this page?
I think that would be considered a different type of function. We haven't got that far yet of how we are going to do all that. We're considering that to be probably a mass edit type function, but mass edit may not be how it is today. Like what Terry was talking about earlier, like I can't do it because one's already been edited, We don't want to do that anymore.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
This view here, this is going to be a view that would match throughout the billing process. So the sent date's important to see. Like it might be helpful to have sent date somewhere viewable on this, if not as its own column, or that way, if we see that, this decision to approve this billing was done on the 13th and this day for this was done on the 15th, it'd be helpful to find out why those were separately, and the sent date might inform those, as well as the batch number, obviously. But I can see reasons why, if we don't include sent date on the filter, that we would want to show that here.
Yeah, I thought of that, and invoice number is also missing from this.
Yeah.
Just more stuff to try to squeeze in there.
Yeah.
But I hear you.
Melissa,
Yeah.
Brenda is asking if this view will show all fund codes for the month. So if a day becomes unavailable, will it show that fund source as well?
No, this view that I'm not sure that's showing right now is the bill detail, and that is based on a service definition line, which is one particular fund source. However, at the end here, let me go back there. This guy will show the difference for when you get to that page. You could see that there's multiple fund sources to pull up each one separately, but they won't be all combined. There's going to be a different screen where you could see, I think, more detail customized based on how you want to see it. That's that mass edit area that I'm alluding to that we have not figured out yet. But that's the idea for if you're needing to see things kind of more all put together. The stuff is very complicated.
So if a client has a service that is like for first part of the month, just a standard care plan, second part they have they're considered at risk, will that show, will that all, and let's say they're still staying 100, would that show all under 100, or will that show as two separate views? Like, so will that be in the Mickey Mouse view?
So participant at risk in the new world is moved to the event level.
Okay.
So this is technically another design call because we haven't worked all the kinks out, but the theory is that events can be all over the place in this month, right? You could have a Monday, Wednesday, Friday setup event. You could have a Tuesday, Thursday. They could each have different participant at risk theoretically, maybe not make sense, but whatever. And the theory is that you could click this and see what events participant at risk applied to for the month.
Okay.
Within that service definition line, because we're going to take it out of the top level and only put it in per event.
Okay.
Because that was a request we'd had years ago that it didn't make sense necessarily at the service definition level.
Melissa?
Yeah.
Brenda is asking, will the unbillable day be blocked out so they can't bill on a regular bill?
If you mean it's going to work the same as it does today, that if the dates of service are outside the service definition line date range, then yes, they will be blocked out. Okay. So I'm feeling like we may want to revisit this all filter once we figure out what we're going to do with the rest of our life and figure out what you're really going to need to see and filter out, because there may be more things like we talked about, maybe the things that are not verified might be another filter. This may be needed to have, like you said, based on badge ID. I think we have to kind of work through the workflows a little more on that to determine the all filter needs. I'm taking notes. Okay. All right, so the next thing. All right. So new agent post and approve process. So one of the major advantages that we have this combined place to post and approve is agent users are easily able to approve the bills they enter. Currently, MISIS doesn't allow the tracking of the posted units and cost per unit, only what was approved. Okay, so with this new integration of MISIS and vendor billing, we think it would be helpful for you to track the posted values versus the approved values in the system that you could use for analytics in the future. However, we want to make this simple as well for you guys that are posting as the vendor when the vendor doesn't use vendor billing. So we have a very rough plan on this. So again, bear with us. In that how this would work would be that the posted values would auto-populate with the authorized values. So it's similar to how it does now, like in MISIS, that when you would go to post as an agency, it defaults to what was authorized. And then if needed, you can change those posted values to whatever the vendor actually billed for. And then we are also thinking we may add a button that would autofill the approved values based on the posted values. So then you'd basically, that's when you'd say, okay, so I got everything posted. Let's, autofill the approved values with this button. And then all you'd have to do is make changes to the dates that you're not approving for whatever values need to change to, similar to how you're doing vendor billing today, in that it defaults to the posted values and you just change. And that should save a lot of the duplicate data entry without having to post everything separate and make it quicker to approve. So one of the questions is, some agencies have indicated they wanted to default the vendors posting to the authorized units too. So we already do cost per unit, in filling the vendor screen, but we don't do the units. For the application, it'd be easier for us to treat agent and vendor users the same if nobody objects to that. So right now we only post the cost per unit every day, and the vendor has to go in, really put in all the authorized units when they go to post. This is saying that it would default to whatever you authorized, and they would just make changes and save it. Does anybody object to doing that?
I would probably say And this would be a default or like a trigger for putting the default units in.
The default units basically would, when they open up the bill detail screen, the authorized units would be in the posted units and cost per unit columns, just like, it does for MISIS for you today.
My concern for putting the authorized units in there could be unintentionally lazy entry there, and that they click that, but they only intended to do certain ones. I'd rather them take action to affirm the actual units that they want to put in, rather than do it for them and hand them an opportunity for errant entries.
Okay. I know in the past we've been asked to do that, to make this exact change by several. That's why we are bringing it up, because people are like, why can't we do that? It makes it faster for them.
I would say that I'm okay with the idea if it's a button that they affirm that that's what they want to do. But
Okay.
in cases where they might have 30 care plans, then they'd have to delete 15 if they didn't submit for all those dates. So I'd rather have a button to trigger the event rather than just hand it to them.
And are you saying a button that they click to fill in all the authorized units? Or are you
Yes.
saying that you would want to be able to control each vendor that could do that?
I would say that we could make it a universal that they can click a button and it'll throw the units in there for them.
Any other
Would
thoughts?
that
from
unit
people?
cost be pre-populated too then? Or just the
Yeah.
unit?
It'd be everything. It'd be just like how you do MISIS today,
Mhm.
and everything defaults for you, and you just make changes and then save. It'd be basically providing that to the vendors.
Melissa, will the billing screen show the whole screen this time around rather than just partial? Do you know?
I'm not sure what.
I mean, right now you have to arrow down through the whole bill for the month. It won't show the complete month on the screen. You have to arrow
Yes.
down.
You definitely would have to still do that. There's too much
Okay.
data to fit on your screen. It'd be too tiny if you did.
Okay, I just was wondering about that.
Yeah.
Personally, I would prefer that the calendar be filled in entirely for the vendor, and then changes made as needed.
Okay.
I agree with Liz. I think we're at the point where we need to allow for that with the providers, and just provide the extra training, and they are confirming through their vendor billing agreements that the data that they are submitting when they're posting that their bills is accurate. They're responsible for that, and we are also responsible for confirming it through audits.
I agree.
Yes, audits do the work for us, so.
Okay.
It will definitely save their staff and our staff a significant amount of time.
Yeah, we were hoping to be consistent so that we don't have to treat it different for both you and the vendors, just because it just adds a complexity that can go wrong,
Right.
So I would say if, John's idea of the button, if there's a button for them, I would say there'd be a button for you too.
Yeah.
And I know we're already going to have a button for autofilling the approved values based on the posted values. And we're doing that because we talked about, like, as you go, it could auto update the authorized column. And there was just issues with if you did it backwards, like if you put the approved in first and then the posted, then bad things would possibly happen and we just decided, forget that. We're just gonna let you, have the button for the fill the approved and it be a little more obvious that that is a function versus accidentally going backwards with it and messing it all up and being all screwed up and turned around. So that's why we were going to default the authorized to posted.
I think it's a good idea.
Which part? The auto
Auto.
filling?
Yep.
So just so I understand correctly, does that mean that like they would have the option to either hand post them or click the auto?
No. So what we're talking about now is that, the one suggestion was that don't pre-fill it, but if they want to pre-fill it, they could click the button to pre-fill the authorized units into the posted. Otherwise, the option is that it just automatically pre-fills the authorized in the posted values column for them to just make changes, and there is no button usage for that. The other button that's been talked about, it's related to you guys only, is that if you were posting as the vendor and you're putting in what they posted, and then you would have once you're done putting in the posted, you would then click a button to autofill the approved buttons based on those posted values, and then make changes if you don't approve of what they asked for. So that's the other button. That's an agent only button. So yeah, did that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm hearing more agree to just pre-fill it up right up front. Don't do a separate button for the vendors to post it. Just it's done for them and you if you're posting as a vendor. Rather than making it another click for them to fill if they want.
My concern would just be, just the last part on this, that if care plans allow for days to vary, it would actually be, they'd have to delete their line and then adjust it accordingly for it. So that's where that could become problematic if they always have to do that.
Yeah, and that's actually coming up in the third question in here, something related to that. So, and I'll just skip to that since we're talking about it. So the third one is if we do autofill the vendors posting to the authorized units too, then we believe that there's still a need for the units and cost per unit set all buttons. So that there is not a need, I think, is what that was supposed to say. Because they would already match what was authorized. So why would they need to update it at all? So those two, I think we accidentally screwed this up with rewriting it. Goodness gracious. So I'm trying to get back to that bill detail. So at the top, there's these units and cost per unit set all buttons. And right now they can do this and it changes every single row on the page to these values, but it was mostly meant for units. Cost per unit, I think, was used rarely because it already did default on the days unless they switch the days. So I guess if that's the case, so maybe they would want it if that in that case scenario you're talking about, John, that it could be helpful to then still leave those there, but it fills every day. And I don't know, I think it might be more work for them to fill every day than just the ones they need, but and who am I to say? I don't really use it. So it may be much easier the other way. I don't know. But so there's a thought that we might be able to get rid of these and save some space on our page. So there's that thought. Then there's also the thought of, let me get back there. We could, use the check boxes to select individual values that you want to do posted for, rather than setting all. But if this functionality wouldn't be really used, we wouldn't want to do that and remove those check boxes that we were thinking to do for that purpose if we do the default already. But then we thought it could be helpful to add a clear posted values button if you or the vendors want to start from scratch and posting the entire month manually. Similar to our Mises Clear Calendar feature where you're like, I give up, just get rid of all that. Let me start from scratch, right? So that would be a different button that we could add. So that was a lot of things in one question, I realized, but.
I like that. That's good. That would be very helpful.
Okay. So you like the Clear Calendar feature. What do you think about the needing the fill all or selecting dates on what you want to change those units or cost per unit to do the set all button type functionality? Do you think that would still be needed when we have a vendors posting defaulting already to the authorized?
As long as they can change it, because we do pay holiday rate for a few of the holidays during the year. So we put it on their shoulders to make those changes. If they are able to do so, that would be great.
Yeah, they can always change it to what they actually did. That would never go away.
I'm talking about the cost, just the default cost.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, they can always change that too. It's
Okay.
just, do they want to be able to do a bunch at once? And right now it does all of the whole month at once, which then they'd have to delete the days that they didn't actually provide services kind of thing, or we keep those check boxes that we had planned to possibly just check the ones you wanted to do that to.
Right. That sounds good.
I would just
Okay.
like a way for them to be able to change the unit cost for a month, however it would be done. So all days
Okay.
change the unit cost.
So that is a common thing that's happening then. From what you guys planned in the authorizations, the cost per unit's different.
Yes.
Okay. So it sounds like we probably then need to keep our idea of keeping the check boxes. They check which ones they want to do, and then they can use those units and cost per unit set all buttons to make the changes effective to those checked days.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So then the other thing we realized as we started talking about this is the middle questions. Some vendors are only posting half the month at a time, or may post as they go during the month. So we could only auto-populate the bills with dates prior to today's date, so they wouldn't have to remove auto-posted values for the second half of the month, so they're not accidentally submitting partial because future bill dates are not allowed. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. All right. So after talking all of that type of logic, John, what are you okay with the default because of that extra functionality, or you still think a button's better?
No, I think that having it default to that has unintended consequences, or I see the merit of it, the ease of use, but I do think that for that you should never be able to post for today or later. So that certainly puts that into place. But I think having a button that that they have to exercise that to submit those for all those dates. Just there's in our care plans, there's too many situations where not too many, but there's a great deal of care plans that offer days may vary. For that button to default to that is going to be so burdensome on some of our high usage providers that it's good for the little guys, but I think it's gonna really hurt and choke on the big providers.
Even with the clear all? Because
So
otherwise,
I mean,
right.
I think the clear all I feel like the clear all is basically the, I mean, I guess it's okay. I'd rather put it on the responsibility of the vendor to enter based on the day and not just by what's easiest. So the clear all is nice. If you're going to default to have all units in there, I would clear all, but then it's still a rather I don't know. I guess clear all is a good compromise, but not my preferred.
I guess the other thing I wanted to mention is right now cost per unit does default for them to all those days. So right now they're having to take all those out. If the days may vary. So the clear all will greatly improve that situation that they're already having to do. So I just wanted to point that out. I don't know otherwise how, I mean, if we don't default to something, I mean, right now we're defaulting to cost per unit, and I'm not sure if you still want to keep that part of it, just not the units too, or if we did leave it as a blank slate and they have to fill it all in.
Whoops, I'm sorry. I was muted. I don't want the vendors to guess or trying to make up numbers for authorized. So I prefer to have that field in place. And then they just have to edit the cost. But the authorized stuff, I'd rather them either enter it or have to click a button.
I guess I'm not certain if I think I might, I'm not sure I'm getting it. So right now there's two columns. There's the posted units and posted cost per unit. And the cost per unit defaults to based on the days that show up in the calendar, but the units are always blank. So they have to literally go in and delete every line that had a cost per unit.
Yes.
Okay. So
That-
that is defaulting.
Because in the case of the rate, we are telling them what the rate is, but in the authorized units, they are telling me what units they are serving. So that's why I would want the rate to be in there at default. And then, you know, if they modify or deviate from the care plan, then, you know, that's part of the burden of doing so, is that you have to delete the other service date. So, or we can just have it so that if there's no units authorized, the system doesn't do anything with that date. So they don't, if they didn't remove the units properly, or rather the rate properly, that it wouldn't affect anything.
Right. Yeah, that's always true. They can't save a zero bill or if there's no units for it. Okay. Any other thoughts from anyone else on this? Okay. So I'll take that back to Emily and see what we can come up with. And we can talk about that again too. All right, so any questions more about the filters or the billing before I move on to non-services part? And I'm realizing we're over time. I just am now looking at the clock. We're 20 minutes over. I can get through this pretty quickly, I think, the rest of it. If you want to continue till noon, or we can save this for the next call. What if people preference?
We save this for the next call because I have a lot of thoughts on non-services, and to squeeze it in 10 minutes might disservice us.
All right, we will do that then. All right, so we will table the non-services till the next call next month. So the next call is on June 21st, the same time, 10 to 11:30, and we'll be continuing our billing and non-services conversations. Okay. Any other questions before we hang up today? All right. Well, thank you for all your input today. It's been very helpful. And we hopefully will talk to you next month.
Thank you.